corrections of March. So, I started our last corrections welcoming back Shoemaker, who had been out with a leg injury. I welcomed him back by singing a few lines from Eminem's classic song, Without Me. It was pointed out to me that if I was true to those lyrics, I would have said, guess who's back, back again, Shoemaker's back, tell a friend, guess who's back, guess who's back. I knew that. I have historically, while I love that song, I have had an issue with those lyrics. Because Eminem tells us Shady's back, but then continues asking us to guess who's back. It's a little bit like, guess which hand? It's this hand. Guess which hand? Guess which hand? I also was told I did 2 less guess who's backs than I should have. We did make a cut for the purposes of time. We are trying to maintain the internal momentum of corrections. And in doing so, there are going to be times where you make an edit and you lose a couple of guess who's backs, just to keep things moving. Because there's a real value, I think, in these feeling like they're moving from bit to bit and not just getting bogged down in one bit. So sometimes you're going to cut a few bars. That's the price. Shoemaker is still back. First full week having Shoemaker in the building. And I will say it, and I hope it does not come off too emotional. The novelty has worn off. He has his cane, and the thing about he's using the cane less for walking and more for, like, clearing a path. It's a lot of this. Not endearing. This happens every so often. Someone prefaces a correction saying, addressing it to whoever, whatever, excuse me. Intern is in charge of reading these. No intern. If I made an intern read what you wrote, it would violate child labor laws. They're all adults. It's just this whole thing is so inherently childish. I had a drink with me last week, and I described it. I said it was a gin martini. There was some outrage. A lot of you angrily protested that you never need to say gin before martini. And I agree with that. It's just I wanted to clarify it was not a vodka martini, what with current, world events. I think it's important, that people know the sort of sacrifices. Haven't had caviar in over a month. Shoemaker keeps telling me he has a local caviar guy. I won't say what happened to the last guy who used Shoemaker's caviar hookup. But he's survived by a wife and 2 kids. Why don't we all... Oh, you don't want to laugh at that? We all miss Ray. But he said to me on his deathbed, after eating Shoemaker's caviar, his last words, he said, use this in corrections. We were once corrected. This was months ago. That it was Alice Cooper bit the head off a chicken, Ozzy Osbourne bit the head off a bat. Those aren't the exact details, but we had gotten the creature matched with the wrong rocker, and I made the assumption at the time that I didn't know much about that jackal, but I will boldly state that it was a stepdad who made that correction. And then we heard a couple weeks ago from that jackal who had, I guess, gone back and looked and said, I'm happy to tell you that that's wrong. I am a stepmom. And we thought that was super cool. And then I, tried to guess what that stepmom would say when she said goodnight, and I went, rock and roll. A bunch of you jumped out and said, this is rock and roll. This is I love you in American Sign Language. And I know that, and it's so crazy to me that so many of you do not think stepmoms are capable of love. And you know whose fault it is? Disney. Stepmoms call it the Disney fallacy. I'm on some Facebook groups. Well, speaking of ASL, I watched, after the Oscars, I will admit it took the Oscars for me to do it, I watched Coda. What a wonderful, wonderful film. Audible sobbing. And it's not a depressing film. It is so uplifting. It is such a wonderful film about family. And I think that is the magic and the value of the Oscars is you see something Oscars and it makes you go back and revisit something that you maybe missed, which Coda was for me. I also went back and watched NBC's 2015 limited series, The Slap. I should explain that. The network reached out and said that corrections wasn't topical enough. So this is I wrote a kid's book, and one of the things I've been saying about the kid's book is I'm proud of a lot of things about it, is that it's the first kid's book, the first illustrated kid's book that has a bear and a rabbit in it, and a lot of you are like, oh, there's a bunch, but here's a picture of my book right there. No, that's not mine, hold on. This is, there we go, that's it, fuck, hold on. This is, what are we doing, guys, hold on. Who would put them in this order? This is, all right, there we are. The first, who stacked these? Oh, it was Jimmy Riley. And if there's a rule at NBC, it's don't cross a Riley. Because there's one around every corner. That is, if you want to know what the base of power is, at 30 Rock. True story, I once saw Jimmy Riley pass Lorne Michaels in the hallway. And Jimmy said, hey, Lorne. And Lorne said, nice to see you, Mr. Riley. I mispronounced the name of the character Saruman. Saruman from Lord of the Rings. Saruman. I don't know. It's so embarrassing to me because I did see the film, and obviously they say it in the film. Although, if they didn't say it in the first 15 minutes. I admitted that I don't get my tuna from the grocery store, but rather the omakase menu at my favorite sushi restaurant. A few of you food snobs said there's no such thing as an omakase menu. Omakase is the absence of a menu. It roughly translates to, I leave it up to you. I have been trying the omakase menu at McDonald's. Have you heard about this? Have you heard about this, Shoemaker? The omakase menu. It's only available at the drive-thru. It's $50, and they hand you a bag with food of their choosing. I've done like 8 or 9 times. Every time it's been a fillet of fish. Just one, like not from that day. But it's worth it for the surprise, that excitement of getting a bag. and not knowing until you open it up. I mean, it's filet, you kind of know it's filet of fish as soon as it gets in the car. So I said leitmotif, and then I was told it's leitmotif. You don't say the T. Woof. Thank you to the German viewers of Corrections who jumped out and said, that is a German word, and you say the T, because in Germany, you say all the letters! Which is better, thank you. It's not like French words. It's like, yeah, this is not the T to say. Merch Madness. We're down to our last 4 mugs. You've been voting at Sea Captain polls on Twitter. We're down to our final 4. Our final 4 mugs. This was an underperforming mug that didn't even get out of the final 16. Jack Keel. I feel like this wasn't appreciated, but I'm gonna send it to Emily Spivey. I feel like she'll appreciate it. So we're down to our final 4 mugs. Which mug is gonna win? Omakase. Hey, some people have said, it's very hurtful, that this is a ripoff of Conan O'Brien did a segment, called Corrections, which is a fantastic bit that I love. I do feel like this is different enough, but I appreciate that, it has the same name. And moving forward, when we come up with anything, we're gonna try to avoid that error in the future. So I apologize for that. I wanna read some comments we received this week. I guess you could call it viewer mail. Someone wrote, I never comment, this was the funniest goddamn thing I've ever watched. Asterisk. Then you look down, asterisk, I'm super high and kind of drunk right now. Just give the compliment. I wanted to get this word for word. WTF did I just watched that was horrible? Well, I understand someone like you with no imperfections wouldn't understand corrections. And then someone else, I'm gonna do 2 nice ones and 1 mean one this week. Someone wrote, best thing network TV has allowed in a while. Not technically. Oh, finally. I showed a second letter from E.B. White last week. And there were a lot of accusations about me having written these letters. Due to the fact that there were a litany of errors in them that people feel like, elements of style wouldn't have made. Instead of a 1 in the date, E.B. used a capital I. He forgot to sign last week's letter. In last week's letter, he called a key on a keyboard. He called a typewriter key a button, which a lot of people said he would never do. One person said it couldn't have been a letter from E.B. White, the E.B. White collection at Cornell, because they would never have given you the original, which I had. And I do think, looking back, it was a new librarian who gave me that. Because when I went back this week to see if there was another letter, she was gone. This sort of young, perky librarian I dealt with. Obviously, she messed up and she did lose her job over it. And there was the woman this week was a very officious, very stern woman, what Shoemaker likes to call a battle axe. And she gave me another letter, and she made it very clear the steps I had to take to look at a letter like this. So, obviously, to prove this is a real E.B. White letter, I'm gonna make sure we get it right. Because that's what we're here to do. Get things right. We're not here to mess around, especially with something as historic as a letter like this. So we're gonna take our time. It's not like Ben Stiller is here. He is? Who was supposed to? Oh, Jimmy? Well, that's fine. That's fine. Oh, don't even tell him. Okay, here we go. Here's the letter. Here's the letter from. Okay, let's see here. Oh boy, hold on. I'm going to do it this way. Here we go. Dear Kay, it has been. Oh, first of all, we see here, because again, April 2nd, 1953. Dear Kay, it has been a week. Wanted to share some exciting news. I have started a new book about a pig and a spider. Spoiler alert, the spider doesn't make it. Already laughing, thinking about how hard it's going to make kids cry. Also found out this week that typewriters have keys and not buttons. And yeah, I misspelled typewriters in the previous sentence, but I don't have time to start over. I work at the New Yorker, lest you forget. P.S. I'm not signing my letters anymore because, not to be a dick, my signature is super valuable and I can't just give it away. This is crazy. I just noticed. Hold on. Seems like there's something else here. Can we see this? All right, you guys can see it. I'm going to read it now. Kay, you must never show this to anyone. I typed it super small so only you would see it. In my last letter, I, on purpose, wrote typewriter button instead of key. This was a trap. If anyone in your life pointed that out to you as a mistake, they are a jackal. And you should take all steps to get them out of your life. All the best, E.B. White. Whew. What we're learning about this man. Well, I think this one went really well. I feel like there's something else. But alternatively, there might not be.